Dobry wieczór. Tutaj William. Witajcie na cotygodniowym podsumowaniu Polski wiadomości ze mną, Williamem Murphy. Witam was bardzo serdecznie. The main news stories this week have included Poland leads international commemorations marking the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi German Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. The constitutional clash escalates between the government and the Supreme Court over judicial reforms, as the Sejm passes a controversial new law. Platforma Obywatelska members elect Boris Budka as their new leader. And Poland is to purchase 32 F-35 fighter jets from the US at a cost of $4.6 billion. Monday marked the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi German Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp by advancing Red Army forces on January 27, 1945, which revealed to the world the full horrors of what had been perpetrated there. The anniversary was marked by a commemorative event led by Poland and attended by representatives of around 60 countries, including the presidents of Germany, Israel and Ukraine, as well as many other world leaders. Russia was represented by its ambassador to Poland. President Michael D. Higgins represented Ireland. President Andrzej Duda was the principal speaker at the event in the town of Oswiecim, telling the assembled guests, who included Holocaust survivors, that the Holocaust, of which Auschwitz was the main site and symbol, was an unprecedented crime in the history of mankind. Hatred, chauvinism, nationalism, racism and anti-Semitism took the form of a massive, organised and methodical extermination operation. He added that the enormity of the crime committed here is frightening, but we must not look away. We must never forget about it. The head of the World Jewish Congress, Ron Lauder, who chairs the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial Foundation, also spoke at the ceremony. More than 1.1 million people, mostly members of the Jewish faith, but including many Poles, Roma, Soviet prisoners of war and others, died at Auschwitz-Birkenau, which operated between May 1940 and January 1945. Unlike last Thursday's World Holocaust Forum in Jerusalem, the Polish event was free of controversy. President Andrzej Duda had declined to attend the Jerusalem event, maintaining he hadn't been invited to speak, unlike the heads of state of France, Germany, Israel and Russia. The relevant one, of course, being the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russia and Poland had been engaged in a bitter war of words over events leading up to the outbreak of the Second World War. Relations between Poland and Israel had been strained in recent years, primarily over differing interpretations of historical events. Both are nations who, more than most, have suffered from and fought against totalitarianism, so painful misunderstandings between them are, in my view, a source of particular regret. One of the positive aspects of the Auschwitz commemoration was the visit to Poland of the Israeli President, Reuven Rivlin, who was very explicit in laying responsibility for the Holocaust where it belongs, at the feet of Nazi Germany. He said that, "We remember that Poland and the Polish people were victims of World War II. We remember that it was Nazi Germany that initiated, planned and committed genocide on the Jewish people." On Monday, President Rivlin extended an invitation to President Duda to visit Israel to explore there how relations between the two countries can be strengthened. Poland was also this week at the centre of much international media coverage due to the ongoing clash between elements of the country's judiciary and the Prawo i Sprawiedliwość government. Last Thursday, the Sejm passed on a 234 to 211 vote the government's latest judicial reform law, enabling judges who question the legitimacy of the appointment or rulings of other judges to be disciplined. The measures arise from criticism by some judges of the decisions of judges appointed by the newly formed National Council of the Judiciary, which critics say is under the political influence of the government. The same vote overturned the earlier rejection of the bill by the opposition-controlled Senate and sent it for signature by President Duda. The leaders of Platforma Obywatelska, Lewica and the Polish People's Party Kukiz 15 called on the President not to sign the bill and to meet them to discuss it. The Supreme Court then came into open conflict with the government, by maintaining that rulings of judges appointed under new government rules could be challenged. The Supreme Court ruling caused chaos in the Common Courts, with some judges postponing court proceedings after the ruling, fearful of being caught between the government and the Supreme Court, and that their rulings could be annulled, while others carried on regardless. Justice Minister Zbigniew Ziobro dismissed the ruling, describing it as a gross violation of the law and as having no legal force. With Prime Minister Morawiecki warning of judicial chaos in Poland if judges were free to question the appointment or verdicts of their colleagues, the government spokesman, Piotr Mueller, said they'd refer the action of the Supreme Court to the Constitutional Tribunal to determine if the court has the right to rule on the legitimacy of judges appointed under the new laws. Of course, the Constitutional Tribunal is a body the opposition and other critics of the government, both at home and abroad, maintain has itself been politicised. The European Union institutions have been extensively engaged in the ongoing judicial dispute in Poland, with the European Commission taking multiple enforcement actions against the country in the European Court of Justice. On Friday, the Commission said it was very concerned with the state of the rule of law in Poland. It asked the European Court of Justice to temporarily suspend the new Polish law. On Saturday, the head of the European Commission's representation in Warsaw was summoned to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to hear a protest over what Poland termed an inadmissible statement by a Commission spokesman, questioning the legitimacy of the Constitutional Tribunal. There have been hopes that the replacement of the Juncker Commission with the von der Leyen Commission would lead to an improvement in relations. This week, the Commission Vice President, with responsibility for values and transparency, Vera Jourova, visited Warsaw and stressed that the door was open for dialogue. She met with, among others, Justice Minister Zbigniew Ziobro, as well as opposition leaders. Marshal of the Senate and opposition politician Tomasz Grodzki warned that the Commission could tie financial assistance to Poland from the EU budget to their view of compliance with the rule of law. Speaking after meeting with Jourova, Ziobro told journalists that Poland is prepared to compromise over the judicial dispute with the EU under certain conditions, saying that, "I declared readiness to convince my colleagues from the ruling bloc to consider coming up with a new model for choosing judges." Jourova said at a press conference after the meeting that from the EU side, we are ready for dialogue. We cannot make compromises on the basic principles, and the rule of law is one of the basic principles. However, it is quite obvious that we need to work together on better defining what are the basic principles of the rule of law, what are the main parameters of an independent judiciary, and what the member states are expected to do to keep their position as reliable, trustworthy partners in the European judicial sphere. Poland's main opposition party, Platforma Obywatelska, have elected a new leader. He's Borys Budka, a former justice minister who was the choice of 79% of the 9,400 eligible voters in a ballot held across the country on Saturday. He'll replace Yegor Schetyna, whose 4-year term of office finishes at the end of the month. Schetyna, who didn't seek a fresh mandate, had supported the candidacy of former Defence Minister Tomasz Siemoniak. On Monday, Defence Minister Mariusz Błaszczak announced that tomorrow, Friday, Poland will formally sign an agreement for the purchase of 32 F-35 Joint Strike Fighter aircraft manufactured by the US Lockheed Martin Corporation at a cost of $4.6 billion. The signing ceremony will take place in Dęblin, eastern Poland. The sale had previously been approved by the US State Department and by Congress. Poland's Air Force has struggled in recent years, with ageing Soviet-era equipment, and the acquisition of the F-35, one of the most potent, if not after the F-22, the most potent, fighters in the world, will represent a qualitative leap in capability. Last year, Błaszczak had trailed the purchase as the most important contract in the history of the Polish armed forces. One of Poland's most iconic cultural and indeed tourist sites, and one to whose beauty I can personally attest, the Wieliczka salt mine in southern Poland, has reported record visitor numbers of 1.86 million for 2019, a 7% increase on the previous year. Among foreign visitors, those from the UK topped the list on 154,000, followed by Italy with 87,000 and Spain with 84,000. The Velichka salt mine has been on the UNESCO list of World Heritage Sites since 1978. Toszewsko na Czemczyzn. Zapraszam na kolejne podsumowanie Czechyn o tym samym proje. Dobranoc.